Carnivores and people who live a ketogenic life are generally strange people in the eyes of the rest of the world. We know this. We accept it, even if it also kind of annoys us. But some of the reason we're considered weird goes well beyond the fact that we only or predominantly eat animal products. That's weird enough by itself. But we do some weird things otherwise. We get into weird and esoteric areas of knowledge, not just nutrition, but environmental concerns, animal husbandry, the process and ins and outs of butchering animals. You name it, if it's in any way related to carnivore and animal based diets, we're into it to some degree. And that stuff tends to be pretty weird in the eyes of most people. Today, let's talk about a few of the weird things that we're into that are just intangible. First one, dishes. Most people use ceramic or plastic dishes, but have you noticed that a lot of carnivores use cutting boards as if they're dishes? I'm guilty of it. I went the mostly cutting board route. Those grooves cut into the board that can channel the myoglobulin and fat runoff are great. And if you use an appropriately sized cutting board, you won't make a mess that a conventional dish isn't going to be able to handle because the cutting board can handle it. But it is really weird to most people, and that's fine. Let's just be weird. I'm fine with that. Weird is good sometimes. There's one downside to this practice, though. If you put a few different of these cutting board options on your Amazon wish list, like I did, you're going to be pestered every time they go on sale. And I do mean every time, which is more often than you might think. Amazon loves to let you know when the price on an item you've watched dropped by 3%. And they're not shy about the notifications that they will send to your phone at all hours of the day either. I think I got one at 3 in the morning once. It was pretty funny. I'll add this to that one, though. If you're using cutting boards to eat with, you probably have unconventional ideas about knives and knife quality to use when eating them, too. I blame Dr. Sean Baker for this, who made videos for a few months on his channel where he'd eat a 3-pound ribeye or something while eating, or rather, while watching vegans do vegan things. He'd use a cutting board with a dagger as his knife of choice. Those videos were awesome. But do you use cutting boards to eat off of? And if so, why? Or why not? I'm curious if I'm the only one because I found it surprisingly convenient. 2, strong opinions about meat. Not only do carnivores mostly eat beef, we tend to get very picky about our steaks. You can almost spot the carnivore in the grocery store by the obsession with getting the best steak possible, making sure it has the best fat to protein ratio, and not only for taste reasons, which is why most people get picky, but because you can rattle off the science about how satiating the fattier steak is versus the leaner steak, and how great for your hormones or your mood or weight loss or your monthly cycle or whatever it is, that impact that eating all that fat is having on you in a positive way. It's mystifying to most people because in the minds of the typical person, eating a lot of plants is considered healthy, as if human beings are brontosauruses or something. If humans and dinosaurs had coexisted, we'd have eaten the brontosauruses. That'd be a real plant-based diet that our ancestors had. Oh, and don't get me started about how weird it is to buy beef trimmings off at the grocery store and then just fry them and eat them straight, because some people do that. Brings me to number 3, loyalty to a particular salt product. A lot of people get weirded out by it because they don't understand it. Why won't table salt work for us? Why don't we just buy generic brand sea salt? We love land-based salts because they're the cleanest. Sea salt from the ocean has tons of microplastics and heavy metals in the salt, and I'm going to do a video on that sometime. But they're not clean and should be avoided if you can. The reason so many people love Redmond's is because most carnivores that most people online deal with are from North America. People should use a land-based sea salt from the continent they live on. They're loaded with minerals and are clean compared to their oceanic competitors' salts. That's why we love Redmond's. Plus, they make some other sea salt-based products that are pretty solid too, though I'm not a fan of the Redmond's toothpaste. That stuff was a bridge too far for me. It was just weird and made my teeth look like I'd been chewing on mud. Brings me to number 4, not trusting your doctor's nutrition advice. Look, if you live anywhere on the low carb to zero carb carnivore spectrum, you know as well as I do that our doctors are at best skeptical but curious about the diets we're on. But quite a lot of them aren't even that. They're nakedly hostile to our way of life, despite the fact that they get 30 minutes of nutrition training typically in med school. They remind us that our brains need sugar to operate, and if we stick to keto, our brains will just shut down, or that we're headed to Strokesville because somehow saturated fat leads to strokes, or we're going to just have a heart attack any day now because the salt and saturated fat we're eating. When we know that stuff isn't even remotely close to being true. Yet we also have a strange relationship with our doctors. Carnivores get blood work done voluntarily far more often than the typical person. We talk about our blood work, we brag about it online. Whereas the normal person avoids blood work and blood draws and all that sort of related stuff at the doctor's office as much as they possibly can. Why are we like this? Because while our doctors may have zero nutrition training, they know how to read a blood chart and tell us what it says, at least most of the time. How many of you have gotten blood work done and the doctor flipped out on you over your HDL or LDL numbers? But they were actually fine when you actually know how to read them. Or worse, you asked about some specific concentration of a hormone in your blood that you were curious about that's related to an ailment you're dealing with, Hashimoto's or whatever. You're recovering from it and you want to know about those particular markers, and they just kind of look at you with a deer in the headlights look. Has that happened to you? It's happened to too many people, judging from online carnivore conversations I keep seeing. And I tend to pay attention to these things, not just because I make videos about this stuff, but because I'm generally fascinated about other people's experience. Number 5, noticing things that other people aren't noticing. This one's a bit intangible, and I bet people watching this could come up with a lot of different things they've noticed, but here's one for you. Have you ever noticed just how much space and quasi-fast, that fast and quasi-fast food takes up on the landscape? Think about the town or city neighborhood you live or work in. And now consider that every single one of those places that you see all over the place cooks most, if not all, of their food in seed oils that you as a carnivore or as a clean keto person are desperately trying to avoid at all costs. To the point where if you find yourself in a situation where you are needing to get a quick bite to eat while out and about, you have to open some database, it seems like, to figure out if the burger chain near you has burger patties that are not only individually for sale, but also affordable and free of seed oils. Which brings me to number 6. Going out with friends or family is really hard. Have you gotten weird looks when you go to a restaurant and tell the server that, no, you don't want the sides, but you'll happily order 2 ribeyes and pay the nearly $40 or frankly more for the meal just for 2 steaks? Or you ordered a pile of hamburger patties and asked for absolutely nothing on them, including, cheese, salt, whatever, and then you ask for 6 sides of butter. Not to mention the special instructions of no or little seasoning, and definitely no seed oils are to come within the same zip code of them. And then the looks you get from friends or family who are outsiders getting a glimpse into a very different world than the one that they typically are living in. Or you had that happen exactly one time, and now you don't get invited out for dinner with those folks that you love very much anymore. I bet that happens more than people are willing to admit. And it's kind of a bummer too, because if you're carnivore, you've either obviously cleared up or improved on the medical condition you're working on, or you shed a lot of body fat. You're looking healthier, happier, and people have questions. And being a carnivore almost turns us all into extroverts when it comes to diet and exercise. I'm actually kind of one of those people who lives on the extrovert-introvert sort of border. But when I get to talk about this stuff, man, you can't shut me up. We're happy to share the information we've gotten, acting like the person in the allegory of the cave from Plato's Republic, where we've escaped the darkness of ignorance of the cave, in this case, ignorance being bad nutrition advice. We've seen the light, and we decided to go back into the cave to tell everyone else what we found, only to be treated like we've gone off the deep end. Weird ostracization is a side effect of this, I think. But then again, you may find people who have been weirdly supportive of what you've done to improve your lot in life. Let me know which of the two or both you've encountered, because I'm legitimately curious about this. And finally, number 7, our last one here. You may have done fasting, or still do, and have fasted for longer than a few hours. People seem okay with intermittent fasting because you can just describe it to them as, yeah, I skip breakfast and eat lunch and dinner every day, or you skip dinner and eat breakfast and lunch every day, and how you've lost a lot of weight and gotten stronger in the gym as a consequence, and people seem okay. That seems to be just, one thing. But let's say you decided to not eat from, dinner on Thursday to breakfast on Sunday. Then you'll get some weird looks. It won't matter if it's fasting for religious reasons or nutrition or both. People can't imagine voluntarily taking on suffering of any kind, especially not hunger, especially not in this day and age when food is plentiful for most people, especially food that would have been considered, frankly, beyond decadent in previous saner times than the ones we live in now. Personal account of this. After completing my first monk fast a few months ago, I remembered getting odd looks if it ever came up naturally in conversation with people I knew in real life. So now I don't even really mention it except sometimes here on my channel, where people who are interested in those sorts of topics, come to learn more. And for those not sure what a monk fast is, its name there comes from the practice of Orthodox, Catholic, and Tibetan monks and other monastic groups who are known for engaging in very long fasts where they abstain from any kind of food in some traditions, including sometimes dry fasting. A monk fast for carnivores is going to be longer than 24 hours, typically 32 or beyond. I've seen people talk about 5 and 7 day fasts. I don't know how you function at work like that. Curious how that works out, but definitely do not try it unless you've been building up to it. Frankly, fasting is something you should do only when you've really done the research on the pros and cons of it and gotten help from an expert on the thing, because it can be an uncomfortable experience. Plenty of people swear by it, especially for losing extra skin because of autophagy. And I could continue, but instead, I want to know the other things carnivores and people who do keto do that is just strange behavior in the eyes of the regular world. I'm sure you can think of one or two that I didn't mention, and maybe I'll include them in a future follow up to this because this is just kind of a fun topic. So let me know what comes to mind. Like and subscribe if you haven't. It really does help. As to sharing these videos on social media, it helps a lot as well. I'm Anthony Stine, and thank you for watching today.